Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Paul, I'm with the Dicey Review, and today we're going to be taking a look at the 1 to 4 player pattern building and card drafting game Keystone North America being released by Rose Gauntlet Entertainment in the US. Now, in this game, players are going to be taking actions to collect certain types of species on their player boards to hopefully create sequences of habitats that will score the most victory points at the end of the game. They'll also be trying to complete secret objectives. How does the game play? Well, let's get to the table and find out. Keystone North America comes with all of the components that you see here, including 4 player boards, 10 skill tokens, a first player token, a time track marker, a time track, 10 secret objective cards, 8 wild habitat cards, 154 species cards, 66 double-sided research and story tokens, and 80 double-sided synergy tokens. The game also comes with a field journal, 6 sealed envelopes, and a score sheet. The sealed envelopes in the field journal will be used in the solo mode. To begin setup, first give each player a player board. Then, if you're playing with fewer than 3 players, remove any cards from the species deck with this symbol in the bottom right. Then shuffle the remaining species cards into a deck that you can place near the play area. Turn over the top 6 cards of the species deck, and this line of cards will now be known as the field. Then randomly choose 5 of the skill tokens and place them on the table with their white side face up. The rest of the skill tokens won't be used in this game. Then separate the wild habitat cards and place them in a face-up stack. Then separate each wild habitat card by their type and set them in stacks near the play area. Then shuffle up and give each player 1 secret objective card and return the rest to the box. Create a supply of synergy tokens and research tokens near the play area, and then place the time marker near the play area as well, and place the time marker token on a space depending on the player count. Then determine a first player by any method you would like, and give that player the first player marker. The first player would get 5 synergy tokens, and then each other player in clockwise order would get 1 more than the first player. Now that the setup has been done, you're ready to play. The first player can begin the game by taking the first turn. In a game of Keystone North America, players are trying to create ecosystems on their player boards by playing cards with the same types of habitats next to each other in an ascending or a descending sequence of numbers. Players are also trying to complete secret goals that might ask them to place certain types of cards on their boards or cards in specific patterns. On a player's turn, they'll take one of 2 actions. They can either take the Introduce action and place cards from the field onto their player board, or they can take the Use Skill action, which will utilize the skill tokens. If a player takes an Introduce action, they'll select one of the face-up cards in the field to place on their board. Let's say that this player decided to take this card. The player would have to place a synergy token to the right of any card they've selected on any cards that they didn't choose. A player would then be able to place that card on any space of their board that they want to. Once a player places a card on their board, they would then check the symbols on any adjacent cards to see if they've gotten any habitat matches. A player would gain 1 synergy token for each habitat match on any adjacent cards whenever they place a new species card on their board. It's important to note that players would only gain this bonus for orthogonally adjacent cards, not diagonally adjacent. In this example, this player has a match on one of the adjacent cards, so they would gain 1 synergy token. After placing the card, the players would move any remaining cards to the right, and then refill the missing card at the end of the row from the top of the stack. It's important to note that on a future turn, if any player collects a card from the field that has synergy tokens on top of the card, they would get to keep those synergy tokens. Instead of taking an Introduce action on their turn, a player could take the Use Skill action if they wanted instead. When taking the Use Skill action, a player can either select one of the face-up white tokens on its active side to turn over and use the benefit of. So for instance, a player could turn this card over using the power on that tile. Or a player could use all of the abilities of the face-up yellow tiles in any order that they want to and flip them all back over to their active white side. Either way, whichever option they choose, after taking a skill action, the player would then reduce the time marker on the time track by 1 space. Skill tokens will provide players with a number of different benefits. All of the individual skill token abilities can be found on the back of the rulebook, but usually many of the skill tokens will have somewhat similar abilities. Many of the skill tokens will require you to discard cards from the field in addition to being able to use their abilities, and then skill tokens will also provide players with other useful abilities that you can see on the top. For instance, this skill token would allow a player to gain 8 synergy tokens. They would have to discard 3 cards from the field to use this token, however. And it's also important to note that if players discard cards as part of using this skill action, they would discard any synergy tokens that are on top of the cards they discard. At the end of a player's turn, if they discarded cards using the skill token, they would refill the field just like normal. Some skill tokens would allow players to look through a stack of cards to gain one of them. For instance, this skill token would allow a player to look through the top 3 cards of the discard pile and choose one to place on their player board. This skill token would allow you to do the same thing, but you get to draw 3 cards off the top of the deck instead of from the discard pile. Either way, if using one of these cards to place a card on your board, you would gain the synergy token bonus from placement just like normal. And then some skill tokens would allow you to play research tokens onto cards with specific symbols. For instance, this token would allow you to place 2 research tags on a card that has the endangered symbol, and this token would allow you to place a research tag on a card that has this leaf symbol. If you're placing research tokens on your board, you can only place a research token on a card that doesn't have one yet. So for instance, if you selected the token that allowed you to place 2 research tokens on a card with the endangered exclamation point, you would only be able to place one of those in this example because the other already has a research tag. As a bonus action on their turn, before or after their main action, a player could, if they wanted to, discard 10 synergy tokens to take any one of the face-up wild cards and place it on their player board. Wild cards will have a specific type of habitat, and they may also have other symbols as seen here in the bottom right. But most importantly, wild cards can count as any number from 1 to 5. This can be very helpful if you're trying to get a specific sequence of numbers. And when you place a wild card on your turn, you would gain any synergy bonus from matching adjacent cards, just like when placing a normal species card. Players will keep taking turns until either the token on the time track reaches 0 or until any player has filled in their player board. If any of those conditions have been met, the players are now in the final round of the game. Any player left in the round would then take their turn to make sure that each player has an equal number of turns, and then the game would end. Players would then score each column and each row on their player board, looking at the ecosystems on each space. If a player has a line of cards in a sequence of ascending or descending order, so for instance 2, 3, 4 like in this example here, and all of the cards within that sequence share a habitat type, the player would be able to score that sequence. The player would gain 1 point for each card in that sequence, so in this example they would gain 3 points. If there are any cards that have this keystone symbol in a sequence that's being scored, a player would score the sequence again for each keystone symbol in that sequence. So in this example, this row has 1 keystone symbol in the sequence. So this sequence would be scored again for a total of 6 points. This row has 4 cards in ascending order that all share a habitat type. So this row would score 4 points for that. In addition, a player would score 1 point for any cards within a sequence that have a research token on them. So in this example, players would score 1, 2, 3, 4 points for the sequence, 5, 6 points for the 2 research tokens. In addition, this sequence has 1 keystone symbol, so it would score again for a total of 12 points for that row. When scoring a row or a column that includes a wild card, players can choose any number between 1 and 5 for that card to be. It's important to note as well that this number doesn't have to be the same for rows and columns. So for instance, this wild card could be a 4 when scoring this row, and a 3 when scoring this column. Players would complete this scoring for each column and each row on their player board. And to help track this progress, the game gives you a score sheet that has spots for each column and each row. After scoring the player board, players would then look at their secret objective cards to see how many of their goals they've met. Each secret objective card has 4 potential goals that a player can meet, and if a player is able to meet all 4, they gain the highest number of points listed on the bottom of the card. Secret objective cards will give players a number of different tasks. They could be placing certain symbols in a certain pattern, placing a certain number of symbols on their player board, or any variation of those types of tasks. In our particular example, we needed to place 3 snowflake symbols in an L shape, and it's important to note that you can freely flip or or rotate this shape to meet that goal. So for instance, on the bottom right of our player board, we were able to place 3 of those snowflake symbols in an L shape, just slightly rotated. So we've met that goal. In addition, this secret objective wanted 2 animals with the endangered tag placed next to each other. We were able to meet that goal right here, even though we had to rotate the shape to complete it. The card also wanted us to place 3 of these symbols in a line, and we were able to complete that goal right here. The player was unable to meet this final 4th goal, however, so this player would only get 3 out of the 4 goal points, for a total of 16 extra points. And then finally, a player would score 1 point for each 3 synergy tokens they have left over. So in this example, this player would score 1 additional point for these 5 tokens. The player with the most points would be the winner, and if there's a tie, the player who completed the most of their secret objectives would be the winner. If there's still a tie, the player with the most synergy tokens would win, and if there's still a tie, the victory would be shared. Alright everybody, that was our video. Hopefully it was helpful and hopefully it was informative. If you have any other questions about how to play, please comment below or email me directly at thedicey@gmail.com. You can connect with us on social media or by visiting our Board Game Geek Guild. And remember, if this content is helpful or useful to you at all, please make sure to subscribe, like the video, and click the bell icon if you want to be notified whenever I put out new content in the future. Thanks so much for watching everybody. Until next time, I'll see you at the table.